Welcome back to Jersey Matters. I'm Larry Mendte. We want to spend some time now talking about small businesses in New Jersey that have really taken a beating during the pandemic. We're going to begin with Eileen Kean, who is the New Jersey director of the National Federation of Independent Business, who believes many of the problems for small business during the pandemic were psychological. Thanks so much for agreeing to do this. Small businesses in New Jersey are suffering, as we all know. A recent report came out that almost a third of small businesses in New Jersey have closed down. And the outlook so far has looked bleak, but now we're going into the Christmas season. Do you see reason for hope?
The report that you referenced was from Harvard University, and indeed it did show that in the New York, New Jersey area, 1 out of 3 small businesses will be sadly shutting doors. The National Federation of Independent Businesses has data that is very similar. So it's conclusive that small stores are in trouble. I'd like to go back to the beginning of the pandemic and examine what Governor Murphy did. It is questionable whether the science actually was proved that this was the direction for the state to go, because indeed he shut all small businesses. But at the same time, he allowed the Walmarts to stay open, the Target stores to stay open, and folks grew used to shopping at those stores. They were confident in those stores. We need folks to remember that small businesses, they are following COVID best practices. And in fact, it's arguable that their best practices for COVID, it far exceeds some of the bigger stores. The bigger stores aren't right now counting how many folks are in online, even in the store, whereas Main Street stores are taking this all very seriously because it's the only future that they have right now.
Yeah, and there's a spike in cases now, and I think all small businesses are bracing for an overreaction from some state governments and a possibly more restrictions. We already saw one first wave of restrictions. I guess the biggest fear is another shutdown, like you talked about from the beginning. What would that do? How would that? We're talking about 1/3 of small businesses closing now. I would imagine that would go up substantially if they shut down again.
It would go up substantially. It would further disrupt the manufacturing line. It would create a shortage of products. It would devastate. We'd see a situation where, walking down sidewalks in so many lovely towns in New Jersey, we'd see store closures, and it's scary. It's scary to think that that's what the future is going to look like. And then think of those consequences. What does it do to a small town? A small town that relies on the tax income, the sales tax income that the state is so concerned with. We got to keep our main streets open. We've got to keep the money. We want the money to be spent locally because it goes back into our local communities.
What you said at the beginning fascinates me because I hadn't thought of that before. I did hear the complaints as I went to Target and I went to Walmart and the stores that were open, because it's all that was open, and they were packed in the beginning of this pandemic and didn't seem any safer than going to a small business. And I heard those complaints. But what you're doing is extrapolating that to a psychological effect, that if people think they're safer, they'll continue shopping in those places. What is that theory based in?
I think the theory is based on the fact that sales revenues in New Jersey are exceeding expectations. I think maybe perhaps New Jersey has taken in 50 million more in sales tax revenues than was over 2019. So the spending's incredible. It's just not on Main Street. It's just not in our local communities.
There has to be a frustration right now at the inability of the two parties in Washington, the Republicans and the Democrats, the House and the White House, to come together and have another stimulus bill. That doesn't seem like it's going to happen anytime soon. The longer that's delayed, tell me what the effect is of that.
The longer that's delayed, is going to impact the number of businesses that don't survive. Let's not forget that the folks that are hurting the most right now are probably at the lower level of income. And our small businesses hire those folks. Many small businesses are the minimum wage payers. And it's just scary to see the spiraling effect of closing a store and how that impacts communities. Another aspect of shopping on Main Street is the owner will answer the phone when you call. They'll even provide curbside pickup. They often have their own online websites, and you can order products online locally as well. So thank you for supporting Main Street, and thank you for considering the importance of the holiday season as it impacts our local communities.
And I'll add to that, that was very well said, but they're also your neighbors. They're part of your
Indeed.
Thank you so much. Eileen Kean from the National Independent Business Federation. When we come back, we want to continue our focus on small business and talk to John Holub, president of the New Jersey Retail Association, who says Black Friday wasn't all that great. That's next.